So I want you to imagine, just for a second, standing at the base of this massive sun-baked cliff.
Oh yeah, out in the middle of a totally rugged desert landscape.
Exactly. And you're looking up like hundreds of feet straight up into this glaring sunlight. And carved directly into the sheer rock face is this colossal monument.
It's a relief of a king, right, towering over all these defeated enemies.
Right, but here's the thing. To you, or I mean really to anyone looking up at it without some very specific training, the king isn't even the most striking part.
It's what's surrounding him.
Yes, the rock is just covered in what looks like this huge wall of silent geometric code.
Thousands of tiny, repeating wedge shapes.
Yeah, and they're perfectly aligned, but they look entirely alien. I mean, for centuries, travelers would look up at that cliff and think it was just, I don't know, intricate decoration.
Some people actually speculated they were claw marks, like from a mythological beast that had scaled the stone.
Which is wild. But today, on the deep dive, we are actually going to learn how to read those claw marks.
They really are.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. So the sources we've gathered for you today are pulled from an epigrapher's primer. It's this fascinating collection of 19th century source texts detailing exactly how scholars learned to decode Old Persian cuneiform.
It's such an amazing journey.
It really is. The mission today is the ultimate intellectual time travel. We're going to transform those abstract shapes into the literal voice of an ancient emperor.
And, you know, time travel is really the right phrase for it, because the stakes of this decipherment go way beyond just memorizing ancient trivia, right, or learning a dead alphabet.
Right. What is it really about?
It's about the sheer force of human will. The materials in the primer reveal how these ancient empires deliberately engineered their words and their legacy to outlast their own civilizations.
Wow.
Yeah, they weren't writing for the next day. They were writing for eternity.
Writing for eternity. That is such an incredible way to look at it. But I mean, before we can actually read the words they left behind, we have to understand the physical reality of how they were even created.
Right, the medium itself.
Yeah, because looking through the visual examples in the primer, the first thing that really struck me was just how harsh the script looks. I mean, Old Persian cuneiform isn't drawn.
No, not at all.
There's no ancient pen sketching these flowing lines on paper.
And that physical medium is, well, it's the fundamental paradigm shift you need to even understand cuneiform.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because it really changes everything.
So the scribes were not dealing with ink on parchment. Ink allows for this free-flowing, smooth motion, right?
Right.
But they were working with wet clay and a specialized stylus. So instead of dragging a tool across a surface, they were pressing a rigid 3D object into a yielding heavy material.
And the primer breaks down the anatomy of the characters, which just blew my mind because every single complex symbol in this whole language is built from just 3 foundational impressions.
Just 3. That's it.
It's crazy.
The scribe would press the stylus straight down, and that creates the vertical wedge. It kind of resembles a tiny downward pointing Gulf T.
Okay, a Gulf T.
Then they could press it sideways to make the horizontal wedge, or, and this is the third one, they could angle it to create the angle wedge, which looks a bit like a small boomerang.
And literally every word ever recorded in this script is just a combination of those 3 physical impressions.
Every single one.
To me, it feels like an ancient typewriter.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
I mean, think about it. With a pen, you have infinite freedom. You can swirl, you can loop, figure eights, whatever. But these scribes were physically limited by the clay.
Right, because if you try to drag a stick through wet clay to draw a circle, the clay just bunches up.
It tears. It ruins the surface.
Exactly. So they had to construct highly complex, meaning using only 3 mechanical keystrokes, basically.
Which means the medium dictates the message.
100%. The stark, rigid, geometric nature of the script, it isn't some stylistic choice to look intimidating. It is the direct physical result of the technology they used.
The environment demanded it.
Right. Every word spoken by the Persian emperors had to be filtered through the limitations of those 3 wedge shapes.
But, okay, having 3 stamps doesn't explain how you get a spoken language out of it. Like, how do 3 wedges combine to make the complex sounds of human speech?
That is where it gets really clever.
Because the way Old Persian organizes its sounds in the source material is so elegantly logical, but it's completely different from the alphabet you and I use every day.
It is a brilliantly systematic approach to phonetics. The ancient architects of this language didn't just organize sounds arbitrarily.
Like how we just randomly have A, B, C, D.
Exactly. They didn't do that. They mapped the human mouth.
I love this part.
Yeah, they grouped consonants strictly by where the sound physically originates in human anatomy.
I was actually sitting at my desk, literally making the sounds out loud and mapping it out as I read the primer. It starts deep in the throat and moves forward, right?
It is a complete physical progression from back to front. So you start with the gutturals, right? Deep in the throat. Sounds like KG and
G-E-G. Yeah, okay.
then you move slightly forward to the roof of the mouth. Those are the palatals. So that gives us, sounds like Ej and J.
Making our way forward.
Right. Moving forward again, you hit the dentals. Cun to teeth. T, D, and N.
Got it.
And finally, right at the front of the face, you have the labials, which use the lips. P, F, and B.
It's literally an anatomical map. That is amazing. But why build a written alphabet based on the internal biology of the mouth?
Well, think about the context. If you are administering a sprawling empire with dozens of conquered cultures, you need an administrative language that makes mechanical sense.
Ah, so it's standardized.
Yes. Biological universality is the ultimate standard. You don't have to explain arbitrary shapes to a new scribe. You just teach the physical progression of human speech.
That makes so much sense. And the vowels are streamlined too, right?
Very much so. Old Persian uses only 3 primary vowel sounds, which map to that exact same physical structure.
Right, the primer outlines the gutturales A, the palatales, and the labialis U. But, and here is the massive curveball in the source text. The absolute game changer for anyone trying to decipher this stuff. In English, a letter is just a singular, isolated sound, right? Like the letter B just makes a boo sound.
Right.
But in Old Persian cuneiform, consonants are actually full syllables.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer administrative efficiency of this. Epigraphers call this the inherent vowel rule.
The inherent value.
Yeah, so the A sound was the most incredibly common vowel in spoken Old Persian. So rather than forcing scribes to write the A symbol thousands of times a day.
Which would take forever in clay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The architects of the script just bundled the A directly into the consonant.
Wow.
So unless specified otherwise, every single consonant implicitly carries an A attached to it. You don't stamp a D and then stamp an A. The single symbol for D is inherently day.
I love thinking about this like buying a new gadget that comes with default factory settings.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. If you stamp a D in the clay, the A sound is already inside the D unless you actively reprogram it. It's the default setting. It just works right out of the box as D.
Exactly.
But obviously, people don't only speak using the A vowel, which brings up the obvious problem. If A is the default setting for every consonant, how did the scribes ever write words with an I or U sound?
Well, the system requires an override.
Okay.
To produce an I or U syllable, a scribe had to write an explicit vowel sign immediately following the consonant.
So you stamp the symbol for D, which is implicitly D.
And then you immediately follow it with the explicit symbol for I. And when you do that, a grammatical rule triggers. The inherent A is forced to drop away. It vanishes.
So da plus I doesn't become day.
No, it becomes D. The explicit vowel overrides the default setting.
That is just, it's like an ancient spell checker rule.
It really is.
But I have to stop you there and push back on something I saw in the source material. Because I spent like an hour looking at the consonants matrix in the primer, and I felt like I was completely losing my mind.
Uh-oh. What tripped you up?
I was following along, nodding my head at the override rule. Add and I dropped the A, totally makes sense. But then I looked at the shape-shifting consonants.
Ah, yes. The shapeshifters.
Because there are specific consonants that actually alter their entire physical shape depending on the vowel that follows them.
They do.
For example, the shape of the K wedge completely morphs if a U is coming up next. And the letter D has 3 totally different visual configurations, depending on if it's a default day, a day, or a do.
It's true.
Why on earth would a language go through the trouble of entirely changing the geometric shape of a D just because a U is coming up next? Why not just keep the regular D shape and add the U override? It just seems needlessly convoluted.
I get it. It feels convoluted to a modern reader because we view letters as static, isolated concepts in a vacuum. I mean, a modern D is a D no matter what it sits next to.
Right, exactly.
But remember the physical nature of the medium we discussed earlier. This environmental adaptation, these shape-shifting consonants, is actually a hallmark of Old Persian script.
Because of the clay.
Because it reflects the physical reality of speaking. The written script is literally anticipating the shape the mouth is about to make.
Wait, so the hand stamping the clay is preparing for the physical choreography of the mouth.
Let's try an experiment. I want you to say the syllable day out loud, but freeze your mouth on the day part. Don't say the vowel yet.
Okay, My lips are, like, pulled back.
Exactly. Now prepare to say duh and freeze your mouth on the day.
Okay, DH.
Oh, wow.
See the difference?
Yeah, my lips are completely rounded, push forward. I haven't even made the vowel sound yet, but my mouth is entirely different. That is called co-articulation. When you speak, your mouth prepares for the next vowel sound, even as you are pronouncing the initial consonant.
That is so cool.
And the ancient scribes recognized this phonetic reality. They adapted the very architecture of the written symbol to match the phonetic environment it lived in.
So the written language wasn't just a record of sound. It was an instruction manual for the muscles of the face.
Exactly.
That is unreal. It's almost like a choreography of the mouth, just recorded in wet clay.
Beautifully put.
But, we're talking about this as if we've always just known these rules, like it's obvious. But this highly complex, shape-shifting default vowel code didn't just fall from the sky.
No, it didn't.
And for centuries, nobody had any idea how it worked.
Yeah.
So how did 19th century epigraphers actually figure this out? They couldn't have just stared at the rock face until the rules magically revealed themselves.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where epigraphy meets the detective work of historical linguistics. Old Persian didn't develop in a vacuum. And the scholars who decoded it realized they couldn't solve it in a vacuum either. They actually proved that Old Persian belonged to the vast Indo-European language family.
By comparing it to other languages.
Yes, they compared its phonetic roots side by side with other ancient, already understood languages, specifically Zend, which is the script of the Avesta, and ancient Sanskrit.
And the visual evidence they provided in the ledger for this is just staggering.
It really is.
Because the primer shows Palaeo-Persian, it shows Zend, and it shows Sanskrit side by side. These are distinct scripts used by completely different ancient empires. And visually, they look absolutely nothing alike.
Completely different visual system.
Yeah, the Sanskrit looks loopy and connected and flowing. And the Persian, as we know, is all harsh, stamped wedges.
Right.
But the epigraphers realized they encoded the exact same phonetic values.
Right.
The root sounds for A, E, and K are identical across these totally different cultures.
Think of it like finding the exact same genetic code in completely different species. When scholars realized that the Persian word for a concept sounded almost identical to the Sanskrit word for that same concept, even though they were written in completely alien scripts, they found their bridge.
Wow.
It proved that these cultures communicated, traded, and ultimately evolved from shared ancestral roots. The visual script, the wedges or the loops, is just the clothing.
But the phonetic sound is the genetic DNA beneath it.
Exactly.
Which obviously gives the scholars a massive advantage. So let's take inventory of where we are.
Let's do it.
We know the script is stamped. We know the 3 foundational wedges. We understand the mouth matrix, the inherent A vowel, the overrides, and the shapeshifters.
Check.
And we have its Indo-Iranian family tree to help us guess the vocabulary. Now we have to take all of that textbook theory and test it against the ultimate boss level.
The Behistun Edict.
Yes. We have to go back to that cliff face.
The Behistun Edict is basically the Rosetta Stone of cuneiform. It is immense. It is carved into an inaccessible cliff in western Iran, and it is overwhelmingly complex.
I can't even imagine.
Taking all those abstract rules and applying them to thousands of uniform marks on a stone wall, it's a monumental leap.
Right, because if you are a 19th century scholar standing in the desert sun under this cliff, where do you even begin? I mean, it's just a blur of triangles.
It is.
But the primer provides the answer with what it calls Survival Lexicon, the USARTA 2. And the key insight that cracked the wall wide open is the realization that royal inscriptions are highly, highly formulaic.
They are very predictable.
Emperors throughout history just love to boast about the exact same things. So you don't walk up to the wall and try to read it word by word, left to right. You look for the visual signatures of specific repeating concepts.
You look for the anchors. The lexicon tells the epigrapher to isolate 3 main categories of vocabulary: the divine, the royal, and identity. So before you try to read a sentence, you memorize the specific cluster of wedges that mean Armada, the supreme deity.
Got it.
You memorize the cluster for Keiafia, the word for king, and you memorize Daravus, the name Darius.
Okay, so you have these keywords.
Then you layer in the structural connective tissue, the pronoun for I, the word for sun, and the word for Persia or Persian.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because I want you, the listener, to picture yourself scanning this massive silent code on the rock wall. You aren't trying to sound out every letter. You are just looking for the specific visual pattern of wedges that means king.
Right.
It is exactly like doing a cruel F keyboard search on an ancient stone wall.
That is a brilliant way to describe it.
You scan through the noise, and boom, there's Kiafia. Scan, 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 boom, there it is again.
And by isolating that single known variable, the whole impenetrable structure of the text begins to fracture.
The syntax just reveals itself.
It does. You find the word king, and suddenly you know the cluster of wedges right before it is almost certainly a name, and the cluster right after it is probably an empire.
That is so satisfying.
And that search technique reveals so much about the psychology of the civilization that carved it.
How so?
Well, Persian emperors legitimized their rule entirely through bloodline and geography by declaring exactly who their father was, who their patron god was, and what lands they dominated.
Oh, okay.
So finding words like king, son, and Darius first isn't just a clever translation trick to break the code. It is a direct reflection of what was fundamentally most important to that society. The grammatical structure of the cliff face literally mirrors the power structure of the empire itself.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let's put it all together and see the payoff here.
Yes, let's look at the actual text.
The anchors are locked in. The silent code is finally ready to speak. We take our survival lexicon, we map it onto the opening lines of the Behistun Edict, and suddenly, this blur of wedges becomes crystalline.
The equation of decipherment is laid out perfectly in the source materials.
Right, so we find the cluster of wedges for Adam, which translates to the pronoun I. We find Darius, which is the Darius. We find Kiafia, which is king.
And applying the atomic letter identification, the inherent vowels, and the overrides we discussed to the remainder of that opening sentence, the phonetic transcription just emerges from the stone.
It's magical.
It reads, Tati Darius Kiafia, Ima Tiamana Katam.
Which translates literally to, proclaims Darius the king. This is what was done by me after I became king.
It gives you chills.
It really does. I just want you to pause and appreciate this for a second. What does this all mean? We started with a pile of wet clay and a stick, 3 tiny wedge shapes.
Just 3 keystrokes.
We learned how they anatomically map the human mouth, how they hid default vowels inside consonants to save time, and how they shape-shifted to anticipate the movement of human lips.
We used the genetic code of Sanskrit to build a dictionary.
And by applying those rules step by step, we just resurrected an entirely extinct language from the dust. We pulled the literal verbatim words of a ruler who has been dead for 2,500 years right off a cliff face.
That is the profound concept of the living word. You know, to learn an ancient script, to understand its mechanics and actually read it, is to perform the ultimate act of time travel.
Yeah.
The scribes who braved the heights of Behistun to chisel those wedges into the stone, they did it knowing their empire wouldn't last forever. No empire does. They designed the stone to outlast the flesh.
And we've gone from staring at a wall of silent alien geometry to hearing the booming voice of Emperor Darius echoing across millennia. By taking the time to understand the physical grag of the stylus, the co-articulation of the mouth, and the survival lexicon, you haven't just absorbed a bit of history.
You've actively helped those ancient scribes fulfill their ultimate purpose.
Exactly. You gave their silent code its voice back.
This raises an important question, though, and it's one I think is doubly worth leaving you with today. Well, the Behistun Edict survived 2,500 years precisely because it was carved into stone cliffs with rigid, unyielding geometric precision. It was an information technology built entirely for physical endurance.
Right, it was built to last.
So if an epigrapher from the year 4500 were trying to decode our civilization today, what patterns would they look for in our fragile, ever-shifting digital clouds? And what survival lexicon would ultimately unlock the truth of who we really were?
باگاوازرکا آورم از دا یا ایمام بومی مدا یا آوم اسمانم مدا یا